Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the December 13th, 2018 meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission. The first item on the agenda is citizens' time. Anybody here for an item not on the agenda? Nope. All right, that's fine. It's also, we use it also for announcements. I think I'd like to make an announcement. We have Carrie Mellinson to my right, who is, has been on the commission a very long time, since 1993.
Wasn't 1799? Oh, sorry.
1993. 25 years, Carrie, I've sat beside Carrie, and she has decided to retire from the commission. This is her last meeting. A lot of changes have happened in the town. We ended up with a new bylaw. We ended up with new regulations. We ended up with erosion and sedimentation control bylaw and so forth. And so a lot of things have changed since Kerry started. One of the things that has changed is that perhaps some of the way things were done back in those days, 25 years ago, were not as consistent across all of our stakeholders, across all of the residents, across all of the businesses. And one of the things that, when I think of Kerry, that helped a great deal is that Kerry helped the commission and the town put some consistency into what we're doing. For example, Kerry thought it was valuable, and she was right, to always save as many trees as possible. And so eventually, that kind of language became consistent with all our customers that come before us, and ended up in the regulations that we have replacement regulations for trees that are taken down and so forth. We've had a lot of changes and a lot more consistency, and I think our regulated community and the citizens of Burlington and the business community owe Carrie Mellinson a very great deal for 25 years of coming to the commission and working hard to protect our natural resources. So with those brief comments, I'd ask if anybody on the commission want to say anything? Gail, do you want to say something?
So I first of all, imagined Kerry would be here long after the rest of us were gone. that I can't imagine the commission without Kerry. But when I first started, Kerry actually taught me a lot of things. I used to go over to her house to help sort through the trees that we used to give away on election day, and she would take that on herself and just have huge numbers of saplings at her house that we would put them in, wrap them up, and she had them all in water, would take them apart and wrap them up so that we could distribute them on election day. And then I also realized how intense a record keeper she was at that time, because she showed me her garage that had all the files from all the filings that had been done, that she kept them so that in case she had to refer back to them, and I didn't think I could go that far. That's, you have a garage, I don't. So, but I think Jerry has been Kerry has been really important to our town and preserving, in spite of rapid development, as much as she can in terms of trees, and being a advocate for when whether it's got to do with a shopping plaza or homeowners to push for native plants to be included in the landscape. And it was always one of the first things she would check and look for the planting plan, which is, has become, I think she was the forefront on that's actually become, just standard practice. I think from Kerry, I learned the importance of vertical granite curbing. And we're going to miss you, because you speak your mind and you speak the truth.
All right. Bill, any comment at all?
Yeah, sure. I've only been here for about 5 years, but I've certainly learned from Kerry. And you've always been very much one to stand up for the citizens of Burlington in more ways than perhaps even come under the purview of the Conservation Commission. Kerry has always been making sure that sanitation comes up on the sites that we go to. She's very attentive to looking for things that need to be fixed wherever we go, and is not afraid to bring them up and make sure that they get addressed by whoever is responsible, whether it's our responsibility on this commission or not. And things like the curbstones and, anything like that has always been raised by Kerry without hesitation, and I've admired that in you, Kerry. So I certainly wish you well, and we'll miss you on the commission.
John and Eileen?
Sure. So I've been here like 16 and a half years, and I'm just kind of amazed at the commitment that you all give to the town of Burlington. There's 4 of you who were here before I got here. Gail, Larry, Indra, and Kerry. And it's just amazing that you've given that many years of service to the town. It's quite a tribute, and it's certainly made our job easier, not having constant turnover on the board, having the institutional knowledge and the knowledge of the community. It's really been great. And 25 years, I mean, so you were in your 20s when you started. And,
That's very
it's not just 25 years, it's 25 years of really being dedicated, going out and doing site visits nearly every meeting, making sure you see the sites, watching if you miss a meeting, watching on cable. It's pretty inspiring to see someone so dedicated for so many years. You will be missed.
Eileen, you've been here a short time.
I've only been here a year, but one of the things I've been doing this past year is looking through a lot of our old projects, and I see Kerry's hand over and over and over again in projects from the 90s with meticulous site notes. And clearly, I think at that time, you guys might have been doing a lot more field work and drafting of determinations and things than maybe happens now. So, I mean, I see Kerry all over that, and I'm really, like you all are saying, I just admire your dedication and how much you've given to the town and to the commission in all this time.
Is there anybody in the audience that would care to make any comments at all? Yes, Frank. This is Frank DiPietro. He has been a longtime fixture and engineer extraordinaire who has been through many of our meetings, probably as long as Kerry's been on the board.
Maybe a little before. But anyways,
No.
I'm sure my hair was much different colored when I started. But from someone who, Kerry, you've almost been here as long as I have, and I'd like to offer a view from the other side of the table. So in my interactions with you, you've always been well-prepared at meetings. Your questions sometimes are tough, but are very well thought out. I can't remember how many sidewalks we've been on trying to save trees, fighting mosquitoes and bees and flies and things like that. And again, I would echo the comments before that you've been a great contributor. But I want to add one personal thing about you that I have always remembered. A number of years back, I was laid off, and engineers who are unemployed have to do something. So I'd come down and bug the poor people at the town hall. And I remember coming down one time, and you were there, and you came up to me and you gave me a real great hug. And that really felt good, and so I want to thank you for that. I wish you the best of luck, and you certainly will be missed from the consultant side of the table. Take care.
Thank you very much, Frank. Anyone else care to make a comment? Yes. Mark, how are you?
Mark Vaughn. I have never gotten a hug, so I don't know about that. But,
Well, she's still here.
with all seriousness, it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to appear before. I've been appearing before the town, various boards and commissions for 24 years. So, and you've been on this commission since that time. I think the first project I worked on was for Sun Microsystems. I know that you were on the commission and you worked tirelessly on what was a huge project at the time. So I always know when the glasses come off and the other glasses go on and you're looking at the plans that, you're obviously taking a critical eye to them and making sure that the interests of the town are protected. And you've done a wonderful job, and a lot of credit goes to you to clearly Burlington is a better place with your involvement through the years. So wish you well, so.
Thank you both very much. Anyone else care to say anything? No? Okay. I will wrap up by saying that in 25 years, I have learned that Carrie is incredibly detailed. She has notes everywhere, sprawled all over the documents that you folks give us and so forth. And I have one memory that I didn't want to leave unsaid, now that we're telling all. The memory I have of Kerry is a long time ago when H-Mart was built. You may know where H-Mart is, behind the Demoulas structure. The road that goes between H-Mart and Demoulas, there is a stream there. Remember that? And the applicant was proposing just a wood post and rail type thing. And I remember clear as day when the applicant came in, she said, no, 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 that will not stand. We have to have something more substantial there. Cars are gonna go off, they're gonna hit it, they're gonna break it, and it's gonna present a danger. And anyways, well, she went on, and by the time she was done with that applicant, we had a beautiful wall in the planning. Okay, and it was a stone wall, and it has held up ever since. So I wanted to point out that when I think of your contribution, I think of that stone wall. So Carrie, would you like to make any comment whatsoever? Have you enjoyed being on the commission?
Yes.
You have? All right, well, let us know that, you should know that the commission appreciates your effort, the town appreciates your effort, and you've even heard that the business community appreciates your effort. Thank you very much. All right, Kerry turns pink easy. All right, so we'll get down to the business. Thank you all for being patient with that. All right, okay, approval of minutes, November 8th. Are we in a position to approve minutes? Okay, motion to approve? So moved. Second?
Second,
All in favor? 4-0-0.
one,
What?
I'm abstaining.
301, okay. Next is we're on item 4A. Notice is given, the commission will hold a public meeting, during which time a request for determination of applicability was filed by John Kelly. The commission would be taking information related to the proposed replacing and enclosing of a deck within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands located at 28 Arlington Street, and thereafter may issue a determination. The application's being heard under Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the State Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. And the application is always available in the commission office for public review. Anyone here for 28 Arlington? Come on down. Just, you get the guest of honor seat.
Thank you. I'm John Kelly,
Nice to see
the
you.
homeowner.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the way this works, you get to talk first, and you can say as much or as little as you want about what you're proposing to do. We'll then hear from our administrator about any issues, and you might get a few questions, and then we'll end up voting.
Great.
So you first.
So we had an accident at the house. The deck fell off the side of the house Labor Day weekend, just before a family barbecue. So we were very lucky.
Was anybody on it?
No one was on it, except for the grill, which is still in good shape. But obviously it wasn't installed. It was an older deck. The house is built in 1963. I'm not sure how old the deck was. But we were looking to replace that deck, basically in the existing footprint where the deck was, and actually go towards the opposite end of the house with a small addition to include a den on the upstairs with a small deck to the side of that, with a staircase internal to that structure that goes down to a new entrance into the basement through an opening in the foundation. So the deck was originally 12 foot by 13 foot, and we're actually looking at replacing that deck with an addition that is now 12 by 25 feet. And again, if you look at the plans that I've submitted there, that basically the deck stays, the structure where the deck was doesn't get any larger as it extends towards the shed that's in my backyard, towards the wetlands. It's more going further up the slope towards the corner of the house itself, just to enclose that area by the dining room.
Right. Okay, good. Very good summary. Thank you. John or Eileen, any comments?
Well, as Mr. Kelly explained, I didn't realize your deck had actually collapsed. I noticed that that it had been taken away. There is bordering vegetated wetland on his property. As he said, he wants to replace the deck with something slightly larger. One thing I did notice when we were doing site visits is that there are a number of trees with ribbons on them. And if you were proposing to take those down, they weren't actually part of the original application.
Those were actually marked last spring when I was just getting just trying to look through the vegetation that we did need to have taken down. There's no current plan to engage a contractor to take those down at this time. Maybe later on in the spring, and I would probably come back for most of the trees are actually not near the wetlands area, towards the back of the house where the shed is. There are some trees that have been marked. Most of them are smaller than 2 inches in diameter and are borderline shrubs to the house itself.
Okay, so.
I'm not going into I'm not
Right.
like trying to clear cut the wetlands or anything behind
Right,
the shed
right.
property.
Yeah, most of the trees marked are off to the side.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any concerns at all?
No, not from the deck or that small building, no. Other than the trees I just had a question about.
All right. Carrie, anything on this one?
You didn't put any stairs on your drawing.
There are stairs. If you look at the elevation,
Did we need
It's-
that?
You said they're interior.
What?
You said they're
they're
interior
interior?
stairs.
yeah, the drawing that's inside there, I mean, this is gonna be an open post underneath the deck itself. The stairs they come down here, they are gonna be enclosed. I just wasn't that artistic to be able to actually put them in the drawing itself, but there'll be just the staircase itself will be enclosed underneath the deck.
Okay.
Bill, anything?
No, there was a few branches that looked like they were cut and sort of dumped next to the shed. Make sure there's no dumping in the wetland or the 20-foot, no
Yeah, that's
disturbed area there.
Yeah,
That
those
looked like
are
it may have been temporary, but
Yeah.
just to make sure that, you're not clearing area to try to make more place to
Well,
dump
again,
anything,
those
so
are-
you don't want to do that.
Shrubbery that were just overgrowing the house
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
It just got put out in the back till we can get somebody to come in and chip them.
Great, that's all I have.
Gail, anything on this?
So there's no foundation with the addition, anything?
No, I'm gonna be using footings
Tubes.
or some type of footing structure.
Yeah, the only comment is if, you're gonna be taking any kind of vegetation down, that's along the wetland or in the wetland, that you have to call the office.
Okay, is there anyone, I don't have anything, is there anyone in the audience for this that came out to hear this one? No?
The footings, John, he has to dig for those footings. Do you have anything in? Oh, in this, I didn't look at it yet.
What conditions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go through it now.
Okay, I was just kidding.
So we have a draft negative conditional determination, which means if voted yes, then the commission believes that if you adhere to a few precautions, then there should be no impact at all on the wetlands. So what we'll first do is review it, and as we do that, if you have questions or afterwards, you can ask, and then we'll vote on it.
Okay. The applicant proposed to remove an existing deck and staircase attached to the rear of the house and replace them with a new deck, stairs, and den. Proposed work is located within the 100-foot buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetland, and construction would be approximately 40 feet from the wetland, which is no closer than the existing deck. Most of the conditions are as standard. It's for the, only for the work outlined in the project. Sediment barriers shall be installed across the property between the house and wetland before you do the rest of the work. Any construction material will be deposited off-site. No stockpiling of soil within 50 feet of wetlands. No tracking of sediments onto public roadway. And stormwater runoff from the den shall be infiltrated on site using either stone trenches or other pre-approved infiltration methods. So you can talk to us about what other options might work. No filling or grading on the property under this decision. Any debris in the landscape, in the vegetated wetlands shall be removed by hand. No pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides within 100 feet of wetlands. And this is also stating that the Conservation Commission or their representatives have the right to inspect the premises just to make sure these things happened. Okay?
Question on the, if I decide to go with a mechanical footing, which are the spherical piers that get screwed into the ground, does that require me to get these sediment barriers put into place?
You mean it's an auger type thing,
Auger, yeah.
and then you sink the footing and then pour the concrete in,
No, there's no concrete at all, it's a mechanical,
screws in?
yeah.
I don't,
Helical spheres. No, probably not.
yeah,
Probably
it
don't need
didn't,
erosion
That might
control.
be the fastest way for me to get these things
Sure.
installed, so that might be the
Yeah,
direction that I go.
yeah,
They really don't displace any soil.
Yes, it's keeping everything
very
in place there,
minimal.
so that actually might be an advantage and some cost savings there. There's another question I had here.
well, this is not the end of it anyway, so if you have a question on any interpretation or whether you need to do something a little bit differently, you can just call the office and,
I'll just use this determination here to,
yeah, so it's not, it doesn't mean you can't ask questions.
okay. Great.
All right, if something occurs to you after this. Any further comments by the commission? Okay, then could I have a motion to issue a negative conditional determination under the State Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for the project described at 28 Arlington Road?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0. It's all set. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 4B, notice is given that the commission will hold a public meeting during which time another request for determination of applicability filed by Silvia Chetak. The commission will be taking information related to proposed cutting of 3 to 5 trees within either bordering vegetative wetland or the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands located at 5 Corbett Drive, and will thereafter issue a determination. The application's being heard pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Someone here for that one? Hello? 5 Corbett Drive, right? Okay. Okay, so please introduce yourself, and then you get to speak if you want, and then,
So I am Silvia Chetak, and I live at this house for since 2000. And those trees are coming way too high, much higher than the house. And with the recent storms that are here, I'm afraid that they are a danger to fall on the house. And I want to replace them with something that is not that high.
okay. We were out at the site, and some of us were out there, and John, do you have any comments, or Eileen?
What kind of trees are they?
So they appear to be all red maples, I think, and they're, I'd say maybe 80 feet tall. 5 of them, 1 of them maybe was multi-stemmed with 2 trunks. And probably of the 5, 3 are probably just into the bordering vegetated wetlands, and 2 are probably within 3 to 5 feet of the wetlands. So they're all right in the wetlands or very, very close to the wetlands, just off the edge of the lawn. The lawn drops down probably 2 or 3 feet to the wetland, and that's where the trees are. So this time of year, it is very difficult to determine the health of the trees. I mean, obviously, there's no leaves on any of them. There was only one that Bill actually observed had any obvious injury or anything to it. One trunk did have some sort of old injury that, may compromise its health, but it's difficult to determine the health of the trees at this point, except maybe to an arborist.
All right. Would you care to comment on generally the value of trees in a wetland area?
Sure. So these trees are on the eastern side of the wetlands, so they provide a lot of shade to the wetland, probably in the morning until the early afternoon. Obviously, a lot of biomass, leaves, contribute to the biomass in the wetland, habitat for birds and animals.
It soaks up the water, would occur to me.
Yeah. And it's not and so it's a forested wetland, so there are other trees in there, but it's not dense in there. So it's actually fairly open, and the number of trees in that wetland it's not really, there's not a lot of trees in there. So, taking 5 trees away would definitely make an impact on the amount of shade in the wetland.
Are there limbs that overhang the house?
No, it looks like the trees have been, I don't know if previous owners or the current owners have cut lower limbs. There's not any low limbs at all.
No, they're very substantial trees, and they're 80 feet high, and most of the canopy is like up at the elevated levels. And there was no, except for the one he talked about, there was no real obvious thing that they were. And as far as, providing shade on trees is in a wetland is important, and as well as the water transpiration and so forth. On the other hand, if a tree is diseased or on its way out, then that might be a rationale. Also, another rationale that occurred to me was that there were 2 thinner trees, number 2 and number 4, seemed to be thinner and didn't really contribute much to the canopy in terms of providing the canopy. And, I could see, we could consider taking those down without a substantial loss of the benefit that the other 3 trees provided. I saw that too. So, I think what we ought to think about is, in order, if we need to determine the health of the trees in order to make a decision, then you would have to hire an arborist. So I think the commission could ask for that if they feel they couldn't make a decision. Or we could make a decision on what you had described today. Bill, you were on the site. Do you have any comments at all on this one?
Those trees, to me, look very substantial. They look very healthy, mature, and I think important to the local environment. I would not recommend them coming down or approve them coming down, except for, I think, the 2 that you mentioned. There was one that had a scar on it, and it was obviously the bark was peeled back, and there was exposed wood, and through time, that exposed wood would end up getting chewed on by ants or whatever. So I could see that one being of a concern to a homeowner. But the other ones are, to me, unless there's some more knowledgeable, like you said, an arborist that could look at them and see something wrong with them, or when the leaves come out that they're not looking as healthy as they do now, I don't think it's justified to take them down. So I would say, and then the other one you pointed out, as you put them from left to right,
Left to right,
1 to 5, so.
2 to 4.
2 was the one with a scar, and 4 was a lesser tree and had, I think that was the one that was multi-stemmed, and it didn't look as robust as the other ones. But those 2 on the ends.
1, 3, and 5 were very substantial trees.
Very healthy trees.
Well, it
that
appeared
are-
that way.
They're red maples that are perfectly happy growing in a wetland. It's not like they're, gonna be drowned or be weakened by the water. So, to me, they belong there.
If they took those 2 trees down, would they potentially do any damage to the others? Are they close? If somebody's
well
doing it,
spaced.
that's not necessarily, the best.
They're actually 5 evenly spaced, believe it or not.
I think they were planted as a boundary originally, most likely.
Yeah. Carrie, you have any comment on this?
I like the idea of an arborist seeing the trees first.
Yeah,
Of course, I don't want to take them all down, but
no.
they were planted for a reason.
John, do you have any comment on this?
So I recall, so you actually did contact a tree company and they told you to contact us, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so, which tree company was it?
This was Marquis.
Marquis? So they probably have an arborist working.
They do.
They do, yeah. So you should ask them to have their arborist evaluate the trees,
Okay.
the health of the trees. I think that's probably the best idea. they referred you to us because of their location and proximity to the wetlands, but I don't know if they evaluated the trees when they were looking at them or just looked to see if how close they were to wetlands, so.
So the commission is looking at tree number 2 and tree number 4, counting left to right. Okay, and as a possibility.
Smaller
Okay.
ones, right?
So as you face the trees, number 2 and number 4 is what has been talked about as a possibility. So you can tell that to the arborist and tell them that you are looking to assess the health of the trees to help the commission make a decision.
It might be helpful also just to, so it's clear that if they do go out and if they make a determination that, you know, whatever 2 trees you're talking about are potential ones to lose, if they mark them, like with some ribbon, so that, you know, we can see that. I think that, just to be clear, because, you know, you're talking about tree 2 and 4, and you may not be clear which tree and 4, and
No,
next thing you
there
know.
are 5 trees, so
Yeah.
2 and 4 are the ones that are
In between, there you go.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Every
the-
other, yeah, in
the-
between, yeah. yeah.
Right.
Okay.
even number.
And John, should we ask for something on, you know, tree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from them? So we have some record that was done? Should we ask for the marquee to provide something?
Would you want to continue this and have them?
If that's, yeah, I think if you're willing to do that, have them come out and take a look.
Who?
The arborist.
From the tree company, they have a tree specialist that works for them.
Yes, I think I don't have a choice, right? If I want to do that.
Yeah,
It
basically.
doesn't help at all that eventually we want to replace those trees?
the problem is that those are mature trees, and a mature tree has greater value than anything you'd ever plant, because it just takes so long to mature to that. You know, you won't be planting like a, whatever it is, 70-foot tree or whatever it is, and so that won't have the same value to the wetland that a mature tree would.
Yeah, so it looks like the commission is suggesting you do that to help them make a decision. I mean, the intent is that the arborist may be able to tell whether the tree is healthy or not so healthy or has any other problems, and they could tell us that.
So, okay, so I call the arborist and then what happens? I
They-
come back here or how is,
Yeah, the next meeting is
January 10th.
January 10th.
and I have to prepare more documents or?
Just
We
whatever
just
they-
need a report from the marquee.
Whatever they give you, a piece of paper that describes the health of the trees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so I make copies and give them to you.
You
when
can
I
send
come
them to the
here?
office, yeah.
Sure,
Or just send them to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send
You
them
can
to the
email them to
office.
us.
Just as the
Send it to you.
Conservation
Okay,
Office.
okay?
Okay.
That would be very helpful for us.
yes, I understand.
All
Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I can leave, right?
Yes.
You can leave. Okay. All right, so. Okay, now, next we have a request for extension to order of conditions and the Burlington local wetland permit, 2 McSweeney Way. Is anyone here for that one? No. All right, this is 2 McSweeney Way. They've asked for a 3-year extension on Somerset Realty Trust, DEP file number 122-550. John?
Okay, so this was a single-family house lot that you approved 3 years ago, and it's expired, actually. The request came in before the expiration. They're requesting a 3-year extension. No construction has taken place. The lot has been cleared, and that's all the work that's been done. So they're planning on beginning construction in the spring. But I don't see any reason not to extend it.
Any questions by the commission? Could I have a motion to extend the order of conditions and bylaw permit for 2 McSweeney Way, DEP file number 122-550 for 3 years?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? 400. Okay, next, 60 Blanchard Road, we have a request for extension. Same thing, order of conditions and extending the local permit. This is 60 Blanchard Road, DEP file number 122-565. Hello,
Good evening.
good evening.
Evening again, Mr. Chairman, commission members. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn, here tonight representing Datacon. I think you remember John Marshall with Datacon. He sends his regrets for not being able to be here. He asked if I
Give him
could-
my regards.
I will. As the commission knows, we were here before you some 3+ years ago for a proposed redevelopment of the 60 Blanchard Road property. That redevelopment would be a new building to be located on that property. The reason why that has not commenced yet, in large part, Mr. Marshall's business, Datacon, electronic manufacturer, they have a number of contracts, particularly with the defense industry, that the timing of those was such that they were not in a position to be able to relocate their operations in order to demolish the building and commence the project. Pretty specialized machinery that they have. So right after the approvals were granted by this commission as well as the planning board, of course, he started getting, contract requirements come in that required him to be able to stay in place. So that's since changed, so I know he's looking for space now to be able to relocate. So I just want to explain, why it is that the project hasn't begun, but certainly would be most appreciative of extension of time, that if 3 years is allowed, that would be great. 2 years would be fine also, so.
Okay. Any comment, John?
And once again, so this is something I think you gave a pretty thorough review to. It was a pretty extensive hearing, and it followed an even more extensive abbreviated notice of resource area delineation before that to review the wetland boundaries, which I think, I don't think anything's changed as far as the wetland boundaries. So I don't see any problem with issuing an extension to the order of conditions.
Okay. Bill, anything on this?
Nope.
Gail? No. You do realize that if we extend it for 3 years, that if the project is different now, then you would file for an amendment. But if it's, you probably also, I know you realize that if it's sufficiently different, it could require a new notice of intent. If it essentially, if the commission felt it didn't qualify
Sure.
for an amendment, so you just want to keep that in mind. But I don't see any reason why we can't extend it. So could I have a motion to extend the order of conditions for 60 Blanchard Road, DEP file number 122-565?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 400. You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly.
All right. Look forward to seeing you. Okay. All right. Next, we have a public hearing. Okay. All right, so this is we're on item number 6. Notice is given that the commission will hold a public hearing, during which time take all information related to a notice of intent filed by Hiresh, I'm not sure, Hiren Patel for demolition of single-family dwelling and construction of a new single-family dwelling at 34 Sunset Drive in Burlington. The proposed work would be within riverfront area wetlands pursuant to Burlington Bylaw Article 14 in the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw Article 14. The commission will be reviewing information relative to the application and may issue an order of conditions. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you folks? So please do your self-introductions, and then you folks get to talk first.
Okay. For the record, my name is Mary Trudeau, and I'm representing the Patel family this evening in their filing of a notice of intent with you for the demolition of their existing home and the subsequent reconstruction of a larger home on the same property. This is an interesting property with a fair amount of constrictions, and I'm sorry I don't have a display board for you this evening, but I think each of you should have an 11 by 17 drawing of the site plan in front of you. The house contains several important wetland resource areas. It has a stream that flows across the rear lot line, which, according to the USGS and stream stats, is not perennial. It has a watershed of approximately 0.4 square miles as opposed to the 1 square mile, but it is shown on your local stream protection map, so that we have shown a 200-foot stream buffer associated with that resource area on the property. Also associated with the stream, we have a system of bordering vegetated wetlands, and I have delineated the extent of that resource area on the property. There is a bordering land subject to flooding resource area associated with the waterway, and the surveyor has calculated that it lies inside of the bordering vegetated wetlands line that we've shown for this lot. That being said, once we put all those lines onto the property and added in the new 25-foot no disturb zone and 40-foot setback for any structures on a lot with jurisdictional areas, we had several iterations of house footprints that we tried to work with on this property that the hotels, but we went through several iterations, let me just put it that way. We had several houses we tried, they didn't work. The house that we have proposed right now does maintain the 40-foot setback with 2 corners that touch at exactly the 40-foot line. On this property, strangely, just the way the wetlands have been configured, there are portions of the existing dwelling that stick out further than the proposed footprint of the house that we are proposing to build, but they're actually not closer to wetlands just because of the way the wetlands line is convoluted on this property. So it looks like our house is further from the resource area than the existing home, but that's not actually true. They're very similar. This house footprint is about 30% bigger than the existing house that's on the property now. And in the text of the notice of intent, I gave you some calculations showing the impervious cover characteristics in the pre and post condition. And I believe that on the site as a whole, we're adding about 35% more impervious cover. Within jurisdictional areas, it's about 65% more impervious cover. And the reason for that is that we can't put our impervious house within the side front yard setbacks, and that our wetlands are at the back, so we just had to keep our house forward. We have proposed mitigation on this property for the increased roof area, and we've proposed an infiltration system that will tie roof leaders off the gutter system into an underground system, infiltrating stormwater runoff, and eventually it will discharge into the brook where it goes now, but instead of being surface flow, it will be groundwater flow that travels across the yard. We have submitted calculations showing that we both reduce the peak flows and volumes for the 2 to 10, 100-year storm event. This is there is very little vegetation on this existing lot that will be impacted by this proposal. While the back of the yard and the bordering vegetated wetlands are wooded, they're a red maple swamp. There are 2 existing trees on the eastern property line. While they're not within the footprint of the house or the infiltration system, I suspect that at least one of them will probably have to be taken down to construct the footing and the foundation for the house. The second tree close to the infiltration system, and that one may be less problematic. If I recall, I think they're both ornamental little
Pear
fruit,
trees,
pear
yeah.
trees that were put in
10 years ago.
by the applicant, so neither is native or indigenous to the site. I'm sure the Patels would like to keep them, but I do think they'll lose the one at the corner of the foundation, at the northeast corner of the house. Are there questions from the commission?
Well, let's go to our staff first and see if they have comments. And then
Well, I think Mary's description was pretty succinct. I went out on the site separate to the commission to take a look, and I noted Mary's flagging. I didn't actually have any issue with it. There's bordering vegetated wetland on site, there's a perennial stream, and there's bordering land subject to flooding. I did notice those 2 pear trees that you're talking about. They're pretty small still. I mean, I wonder if you could even save them and move them?
I think you could. if
I
you
don't
had
know,
an
but
excavator out there.
otherwise, replace them with something native. They looked at alternatives. My main concern is that it does come so close to the wetland with I mean, they're at the edge, but it is 40 feet away. But I don't really have any other issues just for right now.
Okay, is there, John or Eileen, is we have a higher proposed impervious increase in both the 0 to 100, the inner riparian and the outer riparian. Is there any significance to that we should be aware of?
Well, they're proposing to infiltrate. What were you saying?
Is there a table that shows how much is in the
Yeah,
air?
they're, I think
Page
there's-
5, or no, what is it? That's not 5, I don't know what that is.
It's the second page of the alternative.
The alternatives or the existing?
No, I was specifically thinking about whether there's a requirement to show improvement
Right,
over what's existing.
correct,
Isn't that what the standard is?
right.
Is it second page?
So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't increase impervious, but you have to make an improvement, a net improvement. So there has to be something to mitigate not only the increased imperviousness.
But to improve the benefit to the natural resources,
Right.
is that the standard?
Right.
So how would you answer that if I asked that question?
I would say that the proposed stormwater management system is a considerable improvement over the existing condition where there is no treatment of stormwater runoff and that roof runoff runs across a lawn before entering the wetland system. Running it through an infiltration system not only reduces the surface water flow, minimizing the transport of any total suspended solids or fertilizers that may be used on the lawn, but it also tends to recharge the groundwater table a little faster than it would if you did not have a mitigation system. One other area of mitigation that we had discussed about and certainly are willing to do is if you noticed, there's been some dumping and debris at the edge of the wetland, and we would be happy to have that conditioned in the order that that removal is or from a piece of equipment staged from the outside.
That would be a benefit. I would have been if you hadn't brought it up, which I'm glad you did, I think someone here who had been on the site would have said something.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious. Without snow cover, we were gonna be doing it, yeah.
Yeah.
So we did note bittersweet, although some of it had obviously been cut already. Some of the trees had bittersweet vines on them. The ones we grabbed had actually, somebody had cut.
Very
probably
substantial
several years
vines.
ago. But if there's any more, that should be removed as part of the mitigation and the improvement.
Yeah, typically what I do with that is I'll recommend that people cut it in the fall, somewhere above the ground, let it die over the winter, and then pull it in the spring, so you do as little damage as you can to the.
So you think you can try to remove some of the vines and stuff and save the trees?
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause that's the problem, is it kills the trees.
Right.
And if you rip it off when it's still so tightly wound and strong, then you damage the tree that's beneath it.
Right. Have you seen applicants have success actually removing stuff that dense?
Yeah, if it dies, it's not that bad, because some of it starts to just fall down by itself, and you could reach up with a stick and yank some down. I mean,
So a heavy
I
snow,
mean, also had
a heavy
an
snowstorm could be helpful.
I'm sorry, a
heavy
heavy
snow-
snowstorm would be helpful, yes, a big wind, yeah.
Okay, got it,
But
okay.
I think it does help the tree to lose the tenacity of the vine even just by the cutting. That carrying a lighter dead wood is easier than carrying a vine that's thriving and pulling.
Right, right. Those were very substantial vines, unfortunately.
No one has done anything back there in a long time.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll make note of that.
I just want to comment on the brook too. So this is Long Meadow Brook. This is not, obviously it's on our regulatory streams map. It's protected under the bylaw. But this is also shown as perennial on the USGS map. So the presumption is it's perennial unless it's observed dry for 4 days in a calendar year during non-drought conditions. And even then, we would probably dispute it because it's probably influenced by the town wells. It's in the zone 2 of the town's drinking water supply, so. So it's riverfront under both the state and the bylaw. And it was filed as such, although
Okay.
Mary did do a stream stats to show that this watershed size isn't very large, but it is shown as perennial.
One thing I found with, when I've had discrepancies between the StreamStats software and the USGS, is that in an urbanized area, the USGS StreamStats doesn't calculate in very well the amount of impervious cover and the discharge from urbanized roads, so that it could run all the time, even though it doesn't have the statutory watershed that it might be assumed to have.
Got it, okay. All right, maybe we should see if there's any other questions about the details of the proposed. Before we get to that, John, do we have to, do you have an opinion on whether we have to actually find the wetland line given this project?
She's already, hasn't she?
I mean,
She's marked it, but we don't, do we have?
I mean, we probably don't, but I mean, I think we probably can. I mean, we have 4 weeks till the next meeting, and there's no snow on the ground, so I think we have time. We could certainly do it.
Okay, all right, 'cause sometimes it's either not possible or absolutely not necessary, as you know. Okay, Gail, questions about the project?
So, one thing, when you were talking about like the, improvement to the stormwater and, runoff from the lawn and fertilizers and stuff, and this site really shouldn't be using that, like with the stream behind it, that, there's usually, it's not something you should be using in terms of, excess fertilizers and so forth. But, so the driveway, is this bigger than, what is existing now?
Yes.
By how much?
Oh, it looks like about 12 feet wider, I would say. Now it's a normal, 2-car width driveway. Looks like it's a third.
And so most of the increase in impervious in terms of the impact on the street, on the river and the wetland is from the roof in the back, is that?
Well, we could compare it in 2 ways. On my text of the chart, in the riverfront area, it is definitely the roof that's adding that 29% increase because we can't move the house
Right.
into the front area. We are adding a slight amount of pavement. It looks like it's only about 10 square feet, whereas the structure as a whole is about 1,300 square feet of additional that we're adding.
And,
Front, like the,
Yeah, the house is moving closer to the front than it is now,
Right.
so we're losing some of the length of the driveway.
and I might have missed it, but did you, so in terms of groundwater level here?
We have not done a test pit, I do not think. That
So
would be-
you're planning on putting all the rooftop into a, some type of system,
Yes, we're putting into a Coltex system.
Caltex system?
Because it's only, there's also a driveway drainage swale, a stone trench that we propose to add, which will take driveway runoff, helps us with our calculations. With the roof runoff going into an infiltration system, the commission has a little bit of flexibility with the vertical separation to groundwater because the water presumed off a roof is clean.
Clean, yeah, that's why I was, and you're just doing that to control sediment going into the stream?
Well, a peak flows, it
Off
helps
the
to
roof,
mitigate it just for
yeah.
flooding in general.
All right.
Okay, Bill?
I noticed in the backyard, in the grass area, that there was some pieces of asphalt sticking through that were in
I
there.
don't know
and-
if it's just bad fill, or there was something there that didn't get completely taken out.
Yeah, if you can take out what you do find, that's not something you want to leave in there.
Yeah.
In the
we've been there
ground.
since like 1991, and I can remember that being there when I was playing as a kid, so it's been there for a while. But we can try to mitigate and reduce that as well.
Big an effort would be appreciated. So that's probably the original fill from the yard may have not been
Yeah.
as good as we would like. When we did a decision on the house next door, we put in we had a requirement for a fence along the 20-foot no disturb. Do we want to do the same here, just to continue it, or? And we're noticing that 20-foot no disturb fence, people are coming around the end and dumping behind it. It's not you and it's not on your property, but it is the neighbors doing that, and sort of defeating the purpose of the post and rail fence. And so I think, again, in the interest of being consistent, that you try to be all the time, we should probably have the same fence on this property.
Would a post and rail be okay?
Yes, oh yeah, that's what they have next door.
Didn't stop them, but.
No.
Oh, but if this
But
one-
it's a reminder,
If
I
this one
guess.
butts up against that one, it would.
It's a
That's
little
the
harder
property
for
line.
them.
A little harder, yeah.
Post and rail with no openings.
Right.
Right.
Sometimes we've gone, said post and rail, and we go, and there's an opening right in the middle.
Yeah, for the wheelbarrow, yeah.
Yeah, real barrel opener. Okay, where on this plan is the infiltrator?
It's the purple.
It's in the rear yard, it's in a light purple color.
That's right, I see. it.
Beyond the 40
Light
foot.
purple, okay, I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Within the
So
40
it's
foot.
between the 25 and the 40.
Okay. Carrie, any comment?
So really, the only two trees are the two piers, and I see two trees in the back, sort of one near the infiltrator and one coming more
Those are the
forward.
only two trees that are really out there. It's pretty much
That's-
just lawn.
I didn't get a chance to see. Okay.
There's a bunch of little patios and structures kind of on the back of the house,
Right.
which is why our impervious coverage numbers were as close as they were.
Do you intend, will they
They'll
come?
all come out because they're part
Dug
of the new footprint.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't see the site. Does the lawn, has this lawn been, kind of encroaching wetland? Is there lawn that's in what should be wetland?
No.
No, okay.
Okay. My only question is, did you do anything to justify the location of that infiltrator that, you can, is groundwater close to the surface there? Estimated high groundwater?
I would assume that it is fairly close to the surface because the wetlands elevation, it's a relatively flat lot and you don't drop more than a couple feet to the wetland at the end. This is a neighborhood where there clearly was fill put to develop these houses
Yes.
originally, and I would guess that there's probably 2 feet of fill on top of a former wetland surface.
So it's probably not, you've got the height of the unit and then the height below it. It looks like it's going to be very shallow.
It will be shallow, because if it were other than roof runoff, I would worry more, but because it's clean water, at worst, you have water sitting in the system for some period of time while things drop down.
Yeah, and the whole thing is sloped downward anyway. I'm not sure in this situation there's a major problem if it's not.
It's really low in the watershed,
Yeah.
and the stream has a certain pull because of the way it looks like the town has dredged it in the past.
John, have they back there?
I'm sure.
Yeah, so I think the
Sure they have that.
groundwater table has dropped a little bit, just from that type of maintenance.
Okay, I don't have anything else. John, any other
A
comments?
couple other things. So the impervious table has in two sections. One is entire site and one is jurisdictional areas.
Yes.
And the entire site is in the riverfront area, so there is no section that's not jurisdictional. The riverfront area, outer riparian comes out way out into the street.
Yeah, I have a difference of 10 square feet. There must be some little piece that the surveyors calculated as being off. If you look at my totals, 2481 and 2471. But then the outer riparian is the same. So either I've made a math error or there's 10 square feet.
And the other thing is, so this plan shows no change in grade,
I think
right?
that's-
That's what the intent is, correct? Okay, just want to
Beautiful.
clarify that, okay?
Nice and it's level and they've lived with it at this grade.
And is this what you're going to give the contractor? essentially this drawing here?
Yes, I think we already gave it to two
Give it
contractors.
to them? All right, so I'm wondering if it'd be helpful to just put a note on here that says the driveway should slope to the proposed stone trench. Sometimes we've gotten driveways and you have a stone trench and it's crowned in the middle and it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, this should be crowned on the western edge.
Right, so is it possible you could add a note, you think, to it? All right, that would be great, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience for this? This one is at 34 Sunset Drive? No. Okay, so, what was there any follow-up from these folks, John, other than put the note on the drawing? Did anyone hear anything?
Show the fence.
And show the fence on the drawing? Anything else?
Well, just clarify whether or not the entire site is jurisdictional, just for that table?
Yeah, I can change the number, I'll figure out where the mistake was, mine or his.
The fence doesn't have to be irregular if the wetland boundary is, it can be smoothed out somewhat, somewhat.
The fence?
Yeah,
I had one little question. You have a 25-foot no disturb, and the neighbor has the fence on the 20-foot line, so which would you prefer on this lot?
And we have a 20-foot.
20-foot no disturb.
20-foot, okay. We have shown, I think,
It's 20.
Okay, so,
compliant.
all right, so what we have is the slope of the driveway, the note on the plan about the jurisdictional area, show the fence on the plan, and I think our staff and any commissioners want to go out and look again at the wetlands. That will be done if not snow permits.
It's supposed to be rain next week, a little bit of rain, warm,
Right.
like 40, but.
Okay, so then, assuming all these little things get taken care of, we would see you on the 10th and I think we would expect to issue on the 10th, probably.
Okay, well, I haven't seen it show up in the DEP database yet, so,
Yeah, I was surprised at that. I'll keep looking. I didn't look tonight, but I saw your comment earlier and I had checked and not seen it
Okay, very good. So if we could continue to January 10th, and then we'll try to wrap it up for you at that time. Thank you.
yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good luck. Thank you for all your volunteerism.
this is
No
now
one appreciates how hard this is. It's a lot of work.
It is an
Put in a
absolute,
lot of work
This
here.
end of the house.
absolute lot of work.
Something about other-
All right, next, the next item on the agenda is continued public hearing, Town Line Road. Some folks for that? All right.
More space here.
Bring it back.
This moment. They really made this right.
Okay,
This
for
is the
everybody?
existing, and three bands on the proposed.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So we won't look at this one. We're still changing the grade 3 feet. So they actually was 6 feet.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time this evening. My name is Joe Blake, my project manager, Mark Changelian, as well. We met about to review the initial stages of the project. I did incorporate numerous changes and revisions based on the feedback that we received from the staff. I know there's a lot of information, so I'm happy to review, if you like, what we spoke about last time.
Sure, why don't we hang on a minute till we get them all distributed. Is that- There's only one of those. Yeah.
They don't have the drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see what,
Is there any more coming, Eileen, or is that it?
that's it?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. All right, so, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. So, number of changes, and I appreciate very much the feedback of everyone and the time and the commitment that we've had. There were a number of changes. If you'd like, one of the documents is a memorandum from the PE that we worked with. I'd be happy to go through each of the changes, line by line if you'd like. I'm not sure if there are any.
Yeah, the significant changes, basically responding to our comments it's usually of most interest.
Yeah. So with that memorandum, we did incorporate many changes. One was the revision log, which we do have both captured here. The pitch in the driveway, so we do have the pitch, the slope percentage, as well as the direction into drainage trenches that we have on either side of the driveway on the proposed plan. The riverfront area, we do have it shown, although it is not formal riverfront per the DEP, it does fall within the town bylaw, so we did get the plans updated for that as well. The labeling the stone trenches, labeling the impervious areas, and I know that there was a portion of the pool patio which exists today that we're going to raise that somehow managed to fall on the neighbor's property, so we did remove that portion of the impervious area from our calculations. We did revise the placement of the erosion and sedimentation control barriers that we had as well to better capture and control any disturbance to the land around the pool area, the patio that we'd be raising. One other interesting change for number 8 there, we did incorporate a dewatering hole on the site. I've found as of late the tremendous amount of rainwater that we've been having. The 100-year rain may have to be relabeled as the 8-year rain. It seems to come with far greater frequency now. But due to that, and based on the test pit that we dug with the higher water table level that exists on the site today, we are proposing a dewatering hole on the property for any additional water runoff that we get while digging for the foundation. The contours are now included on the grade as well, and with a drip edge also. So I know there's a lot of information on there. I'd be happy to dive into any of those items for you.
Okay, John, we had a list of things that we sent them away with. And we can go through the list that I have, or we can see if you have any comments on what you've just been given.
Okay, well, we've had a lot of back and forth in the ensuing months since the last hearing. So, one of the big things is the limit of work has been pulled away from the north, I guess, the right-hand side of the lot, where the proposed line, where the tree line was, where they were talking about removing trees. So that's all been pulled back. The retaining wall is now inside those trees, so those trees will remain. The only tree proposed to remove now is at the right rear of the lot, there is a large white pine.
Right. They were proposing to remove that line of trees.
Right, which I think are spruces, actually.
Yes.
So that's one big change. They did pull the building away from that lot
Yes.
by reducing the size, and so, I mean, you can go over your list as well, I guess.
Yeah, the proposed contours are on here, looks like.
This is
158,
Yeah,
156.
152.
The
Yeah,
last plot plan was
Yeah.
extraordinarily detailed, so
Yes.
I appreciate the feedback and working with John and Eileen. We did separate the two out there as well, just to show the proposed contours on the.
and we had to put the riverfront line on here. Is that on here?
Yeah, that should be included now, yes.
All right.
Didn't find it.
The 100-foot buffer zone line. John, do you see the riverfront line on here?
The wetland. No.
What was it?
No.
What, isn't this riverfront?
It may have fallen off one of the revisions that we did. I know that we did have it incorporated. Fortunately, we do have the measurements for it, so I'd be happy to incorporate that back onto
The resource areas, John, are bordering vegetative wetlands, and what else? Riverfront?
Right, so it's buffer zone to BVW on the lot, and riverfront, probably the entire lot, most likely.
Right, right. Okay, I have,
In the original drawing, you can see the 100-foot buffer.
right,
I'm not sure if that's riverfront, no, it may not even be.
I don't see that line, I don't see
may
that
just be the
designation.
wetland, yeah. The original.
Okay,
I think it's safe to assume the entire lot, though, is in the riverfront area.
okay. Well, there's no need to mark trees, because you're not, except for the white pine, that one's coming down.
Yes, sir, that's right.
All right,
We will be replacing it, I think, with say, half a dozen arborvitae plants along the western perimeter of the lot, which is the backyard, effectively, of the lot.
Deer will love that.
Oh, they like to eat.
okay. Alternatives analysis, we
Yes,
talked
sir.
about?
So we did work through an alternative analysis with Norris Environmental. There are 7 alternatives, which we were able to come up with together. I'm not sure if you have the document, I'd be happy to read through them if you'd like, or highlight any specific areas of interest. What we really aimed to do was, of course, walk the delicate balance between, of course, providing what our customers and our clients are looking to achieve ultimately with their project, but also obviously operating well within the bounds of what the commission has in the bylaws that we have in town. With the numerous iterations that we've made of the plan, the homeowners are exceptionally happy with what we're proposing. I myself am very happy with what we're proposing as well. I very much appreciate the feedback that we received from the commission. The alternatives that we came up with here as well really helped us to right-size the home for the lot that we have to work with too.
Okay. And do we require a waiver on this one?
So, I mean, the proposed dwelling is 35 feet from the wetlands. There was a shed on the original plan that was closer, I believe.
It's over here.
Um,
It's on the new one.
On the existing conditions plan.
Yeah,
It's back in the corner.
The shed is inside the 40, so it probably is just about the same, 35.
20 square. Yeah, so it's about 30 feet, the shed. So the house is 5 feet further away than the shed, which is being removed, was, so.
So that would be the justification for the waiver, that it's improved situation.
So because this is riverfront, would the improvement be?
I believe that there'll be, I can't remember how many trees planted along the rear of the lot.
The arborvitae?
About
Arborvitae.
half a
Yeah.
dozen arborvitaes will be
Are
planted.
you counting arborvitae as trees?
Because they're, bushes last.
What? Oh, they won't last.
Yeah, I don't know how, with the deer, how long they'll,
Well, it'll be inside a fenced
Inside
yard,
the
too.
fence, yeah.
is it a 6-foot fence?
They can jump pretty good.
I don't know what kind of fence, or
I
what kind
think
of,
it's a, I believe it is a 6-foot
Okay.
picket fence today that they have there.
And is it fenced all around the property? Because they go in from the front.
So it's an excellent question. The fencing that exists today on the property, that fence footprint, we are looking to maintain, so we're not looking to move it anywhere. That fence they would like to replace, though, and have it go within the full perimeter of their lot. So right now, there's a wooden fence on the northern side, going down the western side of the property as well, effectively leaving it wide open on the southern side, which opens up to, there's an electrical company that owns the plot next to them, and then, of course, conservation behind. So they look to enclose the full perimeter with fencing.
So can I just ask, when you walk down the trail, is
it's the
there any-
last house on the left where the swimming pool is, yeah.
Okay, is there any evidence of stuff coming from
Not from
property?
this yard, no.
Not from this one, okay.
No.
All right, good.
Okay.
We'll keep it that way, too.
Onto the conservation land. There's some places there
On
that
that
people
road.
dump and stuff.
I also have a note that we asked for a breakdown of impervious proposed versus existing
Yes, sir.
surface. Did that get put in?
I believe we have that memorandum from Eastern Companies, item number 5. We have a breakdown of the existing.
I don't think
and the
we got it.
proposed.
Did you get
Sorry about
this?
that.
No, we didn't get it, that's why I was asking.
Oh, my apologies, I should
No,
have printed it out.
I think it was on our end, I think it didn't get distributed.
No, you know, John and Eileen have been exceptionally helpful on the very limited amount of working hours that we all have in our day. So I sent this over to them. I should have printed it out as well.
Okay. All right, so the table's there.
Yes, sir, that's right.
That was the question.
So the existing is 5870.
Yeah.
And the proposed is 5190. So a reduction of 11.5%.
Okay, great. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You certainly can.
When I'm looking at this and I watched it, I thought that the pool and the patio weren't really on their property at all, that this property does not belong to them.
You're absolutely right, so on
But yet
the-
I see it's the full,
No, it's just a little bit of the pool deck goes off their property. The pool is on their property. If the deck, if you look at the existing conditions plan where the deck of the pool goes off the property,
oh, when you say patio, does he mean that's a deck?
I'm sorry, yes, the patio and
Yeah.
the pooling, the
Oh,
pool area.
but the
deck,
pool itself
pool
is
deck.
on the property and the vast majority is on. It's just a little bit of it goes
A
off.
little bit. So has this been surveyed, this property? So
Yes, it has.
they know exactly, when was it surveyed?
I believe it was initially surveyed about September timeframe, I believe is when we had the initial
Oh.
surveying done.
Because I'm saying, this is all over the place.
They must have had extra concrete in the truck when they were pouring the patio around the pool and said, well, we'll extend over there a little more too. But we're going to correct it now, that we'll remove it from the property.
So is there a trench drain, it says here, a trench drain and slope? I had a note here, I'm not sure what that meant.
Yes, so for the driveway, so we did not incorporate on the previous drawing any type of slope,
And
direction,
I
or
think I
pitch
saw
on
a
the
note here
driveway.
somewhere. Yeah, I remember.
So it is in the proposed drawing now.
Right.
Where we
Yep,
pitch the
got it.
driveway and then pitching into the.
Yep, 4.2%, got it.
Sir.
Okay. And improve existing situation with plantings and things like that?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, are there plantings on?
So we incorporate, it's a great point, Larry. So before, when we were proposing removing no less than probably up 15-plus trees, there would have had to been substantial improvements made to that. Upon revisiting the plan for the house itself and changing the structure, we then realized that it really isn't the benefit of removing any of those trees on the northern side of the property. So now we're just removing that one tree in the northwest corner.
Okay, so if the standard is to improve the existing situation, what we've heard so far is a reduction in impervious surface. You're leaving the trees, that's an existing situation. Anything else that you would qualify as
Some
improvement?
additional plantings, the
Some
arborvitae.
additional plantings, yeah.
I think the other piece of it that I really like about the plan that we're proposing now as well is just the general improvements to the lot itself. So because we have such incredible close proximity with the water table to the ground surface today, and the general pitch of the land as it is today too, I mean, you can tell by walking the lot, it's very wet lot. Fortunately, the homeowners have not had any issues with water coming into their basement, with it being a split-style home. It is a basement that they use. But where we are improving the grading and just the general pitch on the land, we'll be introducing much more material into the site to help with any type of encroachment into the wetlands for water runoff. We were initially going to do a Caltech system to recharge and infiltrate roof runoff. The water table would just have that soaked continuously. So we elected instead to do a drip edge on the property, incorporate a stone trench, have a similar stone trench on the driveway, but also lift up that property, I think about 4 to 5 feet with the grading over what it is today. And I think just generally speaking, it'll be a considerable improvement for the lot and the surrounding areas as well.
John, can they bring in that much fill, 4 or 5 feet?
You
Sure
typically
they
know
can.
with,
I mean, they're not in the floodplain.
with the lots in Burlington, typically wouldn't be able to, because for this particular one, the new proposed structure will be constructed behind the existing, so the front lawn is considerable for a lot in Burlington as well. I don't have the exact measurement in front of me, but I think we're looking at about 80 or 90 feet from the curb to the front doorstep. So we'll have a beautiful, very gentle slope going from the front to the street, which is unlikely in Burlington, but they lucked out there.
But,
On a dead-end road too, so.
There you go.
But I think what Larry's referring to is improvements in the riverfront area are improvements that benefit the resource area, not the property or the property owner's property, but benefit the wetland and the riverfront area. So I think the removal of impervious area and the requirement to do additional plantings above and beyond just replacing one pine tree would be improvements.
So no waiver is therefore required for this, is there?
I mean, it's your call. I mean, it's a shed, and the house is closer than the existing house, I think, but not by a lot. What was the distance of the existing house to the wetland?
I believe the distance of the existing one was roughly 28 feet to 35 feet.
There's a wetlands.
Yeah, it's about 50.
50.
So it's going from about 50 to 35.
35 feet, so part of it's in a little bit in the no-build.
The deck of the pool was about 45. And like I said, the shed was, what did I say?
30.
30.
So one could argue removing the shed is, it's sort of like a wash almost. Kerry, do you have any comments at all?
So the stripe line, or the interrupted line here, this is all your hay bales going around. What are you putting down?
So I was planning on, certainly looked to the commission, the staff recommendation, but I typically use a combination of 12-inch straw wattles and/or sedimentation control with fencing as well.
I think we'll probably require hay bales and silt fence with that much fill being brought in. That's a lot,
Right.
a lot of fill.
Right, that's what I was thinking as well.
Be happy to.
Yeah. Bill, anything else?
You're putting in a retaining wall.
Yes.
Is that a change from the original plan? And my question is, what's the maximum height of the retaining wall?
So the retaining wall is a change from the initial, and the height we're looking to maintain is less than 4 feet for that retaining wall on the northern
Okay, so
side of the
that
property.
doesn't count as a structure needing a building permit then with under 4 feet, so
Yes, sir.
that won't need a waiver to put in the retaining wall.
Is that at the back, Bill?
Okay.
That's along the very top of the
Oh,
drawing.
the
Yeah,
top?
yeah, right at the
Okay.
top.
Oh, I
yeah.
see it.
Yeah, Gail, anything?
No, I'm all set now.
All right, I don't have anything further. John, any last comments, and then I'll ask anyone
I
in the...
have just a question.
Go
So
right
just
ahead.
about the logistics. It looked to me that if you're staying in the remaining house, that it's only going to be around 6 or 8 feet from the new one. How are you going to manage to do the build?
So I tried to keep the barrier to roughly 12 to 15 feet with the different separation there. I really only need about 5 to 6 feet for a bucket to be able to pass within there. But I, of course, wanted to keep a barrier there instead. With the placement of the newly proposed structure on that lot, actually pulling it away from the northern border where the wetlands are, it gives me even more room to get a machine in on that side and then be able to move around the back of the property there as well. We'll use a very delicate touch as we're near the
You can easily
existing
pass
structure.
coffee to the,
So while we're on this topic, so part of the alternatives analysis discussion was the fact that it's a daycare center and they'd have to shut down the daycare center if they demolish the building. Can you actually operate a daycare center in a construction zone like that for a year?
So it's an excellent question. The homeowner is working with their insurance company on that. We do have a plan in place for the installation of 6-foot by 12-foot steel fencing to serve as a barrier in between the construction area and the passageway for the homeowner to use for their business as well. They're going to limit access from the back of the property. They'll still be there for emergency egress out the back of their existing dwelling, but they're going to have access, ingress and egress via the front of their property.
So it looks like you're gonna have a number of junior site supervisors watching you guys.
We may have a lot of small hands, and if I can pay them an ice cream, that'll certainly help my bottom line as well.
That's only if you get all the contractors quarried.
That's right, that's right. We will be supplying hard hats and safety vests, that's for sure. So,
All right, Bill, you have one last comment?
Yeah, I did want to commend you for working so well with the comments that we had, and as you put it so well, I think right-sizing the home for the property. I'm appreciative of what you've done to pull it away from the wetlands and make it fit better on the site.
it's my pleasure, thank you.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
For the pool, you'll take that out completely, you're not filling in that?
That's great. All of the existing concrete, any associated steel framing with that, everything will be removed from that existing pool, and the deck, concrete decking as well.
Okay, and no one's in the audience for it, I gather. So we have a decision drafted. Even though this, from what I heard, I did not hear any remaining problems. So the commission can consider, usually when we get materials this late, it usually lapses into the next meeting. But our staff did possibly anticipate that there may not be a lot of problems. So how does the commission feel about issuing tonight?
No problem.
Are you all set?
Good enough improvement.
All right, looks like Kate is on your side today.
Appreciate that.
All right, so we have a draft decision. We're going to review them. First the findings, and then the permit conditions. And obviously, you already know how to contact the staff, so even after this meeting, if you have an issue of interpretation or an administrative question of some sort, you can always get in touch with them.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll review it and then vote.
Thank you.
And then you, obviously, you're entitled to ask questions if something occurs to you now.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so the project description we've gone over. Already I see an omission there. The work was in the buffer zone and also riverfront area, which needs to be added to that. Filing history, plan documents. I think these are up to date. Existing conditions plan.
Yeah,
I'm not
because
sure.
well, there's two now. We referenced these two.
Right, so they're both in here. So those are all up to date.
Well, I'm just reading, and maybe I got ahead, but the voted to waive, because we didn't vote to waive.
Okay. So the wetland values and areas subject to protection, bordering vegetated wetland buffer zone and inner 100 feet of riverfront area under the bylaw only. A discussion of the resource areas. We're not officially approving the wetland delineation. Stormwater management, it's exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. It wouldn't be exempt under our stormwater bylaw. And so therefore, we're requiring the drip edges and the runoff infiltration trench for the driveway. Okay, so then other findings. I can remove the waiver.
I think we can say they determined that a waiver was not necessary, something like that, because a shed that was closer is being removed and so forth. And
That it was, you said it was, how many feet?
30, the shed's 30 and
And
the
the
building is
existing-
35.
And-
yeah, so,
Existing house is 50-ish.
so the commission decided it was not necessary to vote a waiver in justification of it.
And the order of conditions serves as the permit under our stormwater bylaw, also known as the erosion and sedimentation control bylaw. The rest of the findings are standard. And I'll come back to the bylaw conditions after we go through the order of conditions. Once again, the plan references have been updated with the plans that you received tonight. The administrative conditions are all standard. Pre-construction conditions, once again, standard conditions. We'd like to try to send these to applicants in advance, but we just really didn't have time to, we scrambled to get this decision ready, so. But those are all standard conditions that we always issue in every order of conditions. Erosion control conditions, on Page 3, condition 32. Like I mentioned before, hay bales with silt fence, and the justification for that is the amount of filling going on. Condition 33 is a requirement that we get inspection reports. 34 is regarding stockpiling, so we put 25 feet, which I think should be doable on that site. Typically, we look for more, but I don't think there's room on that site to get to require a stockpile to be much further away than that.
But John, you said our street. You would let them stockpile in the street?
No closer than 25 feet to the street.
Oh,
I mean,
two.
realistically, they can't stockpile that close to the street because the existing house will be in the way. But we don't want stockpiles close to the street either. So we're protecting the resource area, but we're also protecting the stormwater management system, the MS4.
Right.
So. Condition 35 is a prohibition on dewatering without prior approval of a dewatering plan. 36 is keeping the street swept daily. 37, we can require additional erosion controls if necessary, which could involve things like a construction entrance if we see a lot of tracking. Condition 39, this one's on the engineer. The grading shall not direct additional runoff into the property of others, so you are doing substantial grading. It's your responsibility to make sure that that grading does not cause additional runoff or flooding of adjacent properties. Pollution control conditions are all standard about dumping into the wetlands or refueling on site or storage of fuel on site. 44 is about if you discover anything underground when you're doing excavation. 45 is a perpetual condition regarding the use of chemicals within the buffer zone. 46 is regarding the runoff for the roof. 47 is the driveway trench, and that's a perpetual condition that driveway trench has to remain in perpetuity. They can't like fill it in and turn it into a lawn or something. 48 is condition regarding the performance standard in the buffer zone and the locally regulated riverfront area to mitigate for the removal of one large pine, a minimum of 5 arborvitae or other coniferous tree species shall be planted along the rear of the lot. So you could use hemlocks, you could use any native pine, or spruce. And then 49 are the standard conditions for achieving a certificate of compliance. Then the bylaw has additional conditions after the findings, including condition 2, which is the recommendation for a $3,500 bond.
Okay. All right, did anything catch your eye that you have a question now? Normally, people get it ahead of time, but this time it unfortunately didn't happen.
No need for apologies. Everything seems to be well in line with what my expectations would be, so I don't have any issue with it.
All right, and obviously, you can always question it afterwards, and adjustments can be made at their discretion if needed.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, so if there's nothing further from the commission, could I have a motion to close the hearing on DEP file number 122-618?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 400. Motion to adopt the findings under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14 for 122-618.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. Motion to adopt the conditions, the permit conditions under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14 in the State Wetlands Protection Act for 122-618.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Same vote. And finally, could I have a motion to require the posting of a cash performance guarantee and $3,500 under authority of Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for DEP file number 122-618?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? It's a fairly routine amount within a variation depending on the size of the project and what's being done.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck. It should come out, sounds like it's going to be a very nice result.
We're very excited, thank you. And I appreciate all of your help this year as well. Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
When we do the certificate, we get a chance to come out and look at it from the outside.
It'll be a lot warmer out then too, so that'll be nice.
There you go. All right, good luck with the project.
Thank you all very much,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Say this stuff.
I was just wondering if they, like, turn the heat on, whether Carrie would stay longer. It's cold in here.
All right,
Yeah.
No, you had this here, but was determined waivers, it was not open.
okay,
You have-
next
you
is
make-
item number 8, request for certificate of compliance. This is to close out 64 Cambridge Street, the Herb Chambers
Same thing.
project, DEP file number 122-544. Good evening,
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
and your name is?
My name is Chris Spherical. I'm a registered professional engineer here in Donald.
Representing Herb Chambers.
That's correct.
All right, so let's take care of the closing the first one out first.
Certainly. So if it's okay, I'll present here so I can point to the plan as we're
course.
as we're talking.
You can actually, it's easier if you lift it out of the holder too, and just tap it to make sure it's on, if you want, whatever you want.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Again, for the record, Chris Spherical, civil engineer from the office of Williams and Spherical, not too far away in Middleton. And on behalf of the owner, we're here to respectfully request a certificate of compliance for the order of conditions that was issued for the construction of the existing automobile storage and parking facility located at 64 Cambridge Street. This was a storage and parking facility that's associated with the existing Audi Porsche dealership at 62 Cambridge Street. And what we did was we attached, along with our cover letter, a copy of the DEP Form A. This was an order of conditions that was issued by the commission back in October of 2014. And it was subsequently recorded at the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds, and we provided the deed reference back in November of 2014. And of course, since that time, the project was constructed and completed. And following that project completion, a bit of time has gone by, but not too much time, if you will. It's been about 3 or 4 years, and I'm sure you're very familiar with the efforts of the Herb Chambers Company to rezone the properties at 62 and 64 to allow the construction of a separate dealership building that will house the Porsche brand. And that building will be, is proposed to be constructed on the existing car storage lot. And so we realized when we started working on the project for Herb Chambers that there were a couple of outstanding orders of condition after meeting with John and staff. And Eileen, and so it was felt that it would be best to go ahead and review the outstanding order of conditions and submit the request for certificate of compliance simultaneously with our notice of intent. And so back in this past summer in July, we did a full-blown property line and topographic as-built survey of the property at 64. And I'm sure you're familiar with it. I understand that you were able to visit the site yesterday. And I'm sure you saw all of the cars on the property. One change to the plan that we noted during our survey is that there used to be a building over here where the orange, where I've drawn the orange square, and now it's a gravel area. It was thought that at the time that they could continue to use that building, and I guess for whatever reason, the way it was explained to me is that they couldn't use it for its intended use, and so it was taken down, and it remains a gravel pad. In addition, what we did was we went through every item, every condition, if you will, in the permit, and we spoke to each one of them. And so our letter is rather long. because we went through every single condition. For the most part, everything went right along, but I'm going to bring your attention, I'm going to count the pages here. 2, 3, 4, 5, on page 6. Special condition number 45. During construction, there was an oil water separator and stone cuttings collection pit that they encountered as they were dismantling the former building. And it was thought best to have the LSP of record out to the site to make sure that, that there were no reportable concentrations of any contaminants. Those areas were tested, and a report was summarizing the work was prepared and submitted to Christine Mathis at the Board of Health back in 2015. But none of this activity occurred within the jurisdiction of the commission. The important thing here is that no contaminants were found as they removed these objects. It was just a bit of a surprise, so I wanted to point that out to the commission as we went through our review. The next part of the special conditions that I wanted to draw your attention to is right at the very end, where there's an extensive discussion at the very end of the order of conditions that talks about, and this is special condition number 57, that talks about no certificate of compliance will be issued until the following items are submitted: the written narrative, the as-built plans, and an operation and maintenance compliance statement. And so one of the last paragraphs in our letter, I'm just going to read it aloud here. This letter, the one that we prepared that accompanies the COC, is our written narrative providing compliance with condition number 57. As-built plans prepared under the direction of a professional land surveyor and professional engineer accompany this request. The owner has indicated to us that the parking lots on 62 and 64 Cambridge Street are swept with a street sweeping machine each spring, and I'm going to follow up on that in a minute. They have also indicated catch basins have not been cleaned because of the regular street sweeping program. The responsible party for ongoing operation and maintenance of the stormwater structures on 62 and 64 Cambridge Street is Herb Chambers Companies. And then we attached a couple of aerial photographs that date back prior to the construction and post-construction. So we've done extensive research with the help of some newer employees at Herb Chambers, some of their construction compliance people, to try to go back and see if we could find documentation of ongoing operation and maintenance. And at the time of the filing of this document, this was the best available information that we had. Now since this time, and after we had a sit down with John and Eileen again back on the 4th, we've since found out that we've gotten confirmation that they actually do street sweeping twice a year, and then that back in 2009, there was a 3-year contract that the Herb Chambers had entered into with an operation and maintenance type company in order to be in compliance with the operation and maintenance plan. And that was a 3-year contract. Copies of the contract were provided to the Board of Health at the time, but I haven't been able to find anything since. So since the 4th, we were able to go out and conduct our own evaluation of the catch basins and the stormwater treatment system devices, a couple of proprietary devices on the site. This was done this past Friday. And our erosion and sediment control monitor that we have in our office reported back to us that the deep sump catch basins that are on the site today on 64 have an average sediment depth, and they're very consistent, of 4 to 6 inches at the bottom of the structure. And it's something very similar in the two stormwater treatment devices. So I don't think a lot has happened in terms of O&M over the past 4 years since the system's been online.
And it's 4-foot sumps,
That's correct.
so you're saying, what, 4 to 6 inches, you said?
In the bottom of the sump. Yep. So I'll go into a lot more discussion on how we're proposing to change the site. Of course, all of this is going to change, but we wanted to see if we could secure the certificate of compliance before moving forward with the new permit. So that's the end of my formal presentation on the COC, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions that your staff have.
All right, so let's, should I go to you first, John, or you want to wait? Okay, yes, comments on the certificate.
So this is kind of a unique certificate for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason it's unique is because what they built under this order of conditions is essentially being torn down and replaced with something else. So the order of conditions was for the construction basically of the parking lot, most of which will become a new building. It also included some grading and the installation of retaining wall, the renovation of a building, which apparently wasn't really ever done and was torn down. But for the most part, closing out this order is really more of a bookkeeping thing to allow them to then redevelop the site. So even everything is being basically replaced. Even the stormwater structures are being dug up and relocated. And although they certainly didn't have strict compliance with the order, I think we just need to make sure we have stronger conditions regarding ongoing maintenance and maybe some sort of financial incentives or something in the next order so that we get more regular compliance with the stormwater maintenance.
So, I mean, theoretically, there should be records of at least checking the depth of sediment and stuff like that once a year or something like that, whatever it called for.
We could certainly require them to submit the maintenance records. I mean, so they did it for 3 years. I mean, they need to submit them every year.
Right.
And
Okay, do comments from the commission. I have a couple of comments, but I'd like to hold it until after you. Gail, anything?
Well, I think the maintenance was an issue, especially if you couldn't find anything since 2009, and then there was that's a huge lot. I mean, a lot of kind of maintenance in terms of the snow removal and any type of sediment that would have been on the lot and so forth. And I'm glad that there were at least 2 cleans a year, because I can't believe did we ever see the O&M plan? Because once a year, that wouldn't have been.
so to clarify, the 2009 would have been on the original dealership, not even on this parcel.
Okay.
I'm sure nothing was cleaned on this. I mean, it might have been swept, but no, there
Like
were
once a year is not something we would, yeah, okay.
So there's really 2 orders, isn't there? One for the,
So there's actually, for the original dealership, there's actually 2 orders of conditions, one for the construction, and then there was another one for some monitoring wells, I believe. Neither of those is closed out. And then there's an order of conditions for when they expanded onto this lot, and that's what you're closing out.
That's what this is, right.
The other ones are still outstanding, and they're working on taking care of that at my request, because frankly, the original dealership project, that was a much bigger project. That wall is 20 feet? I don't know. There's a giant wall, and
It's quite high.
and there's a wetland right at the base of that wall, so. But that, right, so that was, this order is just for the additional expansion.
okay. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, I wanted to just let you know that we are actively working on the certificate of compliance request for 62. It's a much bigger site, but we did do a full-blown, again, property line and topographic as-built plan at the same time that we did 64. We knew that we were going to need to do it for 62 as well, and so that was done back in July. And this past Friday, when we conducted our catch basin inspections for the deep sump catch basins on 64, we also did the same on 62. And as we dug into the files at Herb Chambers Companies, that's when we found that there was at least one contract that we found that dated back to 2009. Where we left off and what we still have to do is that there was some wetland replacement on the downhill side of the retaining wall that John mentioned. And so we're just, it's a little bit hard to get to it now. We've gotten in there a couple of times, and we're evaluating the limits of it so that we can accurately depict it on the as-built plan. That's
Yeah,
where
we'll
we
probably
stand.
talk about that in the next
Right.
thing. All right. Bill, anything?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the importance of the living up to the O and M plan. I mean, it seems to me if anyone should know about the importance of regular service to maintain and the performance of and a life expectancy of an operating system, it's a luxury car dealer. You know, you instruct people how to maintain their vehicles and the importance of it, and you should be doing the same with your equipment that's on the facility. So I'm disappointed to see that was not adhered to. In the regular course of business, if someone doesn't do that, is there a penalty? Can they be fined for that? Is like not submitting reports during construction or something?
Right, if there's a condition requiring it in the order of conditions, and it's a perpetual condition recorded in the deed, yes.
Then I would recommend we do that.
We'll see. Next is Kerry?
In the wetland, a wetland had to be repaired, the one at the.
So that's not this.
Oh, that's not this one.
No, that's not this site.
I just want to
That's
let you know that we
62.
were working on it. Thank you.
Yeah. So this project is in the buffer zone barely of a wetland, which is on the other side of the ramp, the ramp from the highway.
But I thought one of the wetlands down there on that property, that they, you know, right at the bottom of the wall, that it was,
So that's 62.
So
But
that's-
this certificate is for 64,
okay.
which wasn't part of the original filing. They acquired this property after that.
After.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we're over here,
Yeah,
and that wetland that we were just talking about is way back here.
oh, okay.
Right, you remember we were talking about the construction of the wall and how it could be done? There was a lot of discussion at that time about how to construct, how that wall was gonna be
How tall was that wall
constructed
again?
without
It's
destroying
pretty
the
tall.
wetlands.
I would have to check the plan. I haven't looked at 62 at the wall where it drops off to the wetland.
Right. Okay, Gail, did I ask you?
Yes, you did. and I
Okay.
commented.
Carrie, anything else?
No.
Okay, we can talk about this probably under the next thing, but there's a lot of old chain link fence and stuff right on the property line there, and a lot of it's fallen over and things like that. I don't know if it's on your property or not, or whether it's DOT property, but it would be nice to find out, and hopefully we can talk about getting that cleaned up at some point.
Didn't they have a chain link fence along the top of the whole wall?
No, they have a fence, but it's not chain link, I don't think.
It's not chain.
So, Mr. Chair, the fence that you were describing, it's on 64 or just beyond the 64? Is it near the back
Yes.
of the property?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Somewhere back here?
yes, yes, and it's in pretty sad shape. And, you know, I realize that from a customer point of view, a Porsche customer is probably not gonna be peering over the wall and look at it, but all of us who go down that ramp off of Route
We look,
128,
we can
we see it all the time, and it looks kinda beat up.
So based on its position on our plan, I'm guessing that it's Mass DOT's fence, but I'll look into it and we'll report back to
To
you.
look into it, and maybe with all the construction going on, maybe you might be able to come to an agreement to help the thing out. I'm not sure we could get DOT to,
Was there a double
much.
fence, John? I thought it was only the single fence.
Yeah, it's a single fence.
you know, with all the equipment there, you might be able to pull it out and clean the area up. Oh, there's trash too in there, some as well.
Wind blown probably
Yeah,
against the fence?
Yeah, right. So they could probably help out with that. And with the opportunity of the labor and the machines there, that might be a good opportunity to ask Herb Chambers if they could help us out with that. Okay. And I guess that's all I have. Anything else? All right. So are you, at this point, recommending closing this one out, John?
I am, and so there were ongoing perpetual conditions in the existing order, the original order, that I'm recommending that we not continue on. Typically, the perpetual conditions are noted in the certificate of compliance, but in this case, the site is basically being reconstructed all over again. So I think we should just not put those on the certificate, just treat this more as a bookkeeping thing, and those conditions would then be on the following order.
Okay. And Did you folks check that we got the inspection reports? The material says we got it, but
I don't see inspection reports in the file.
Mr. Chair, your material said that there was an inspection report?
yeah, the condition number, somewhere in here. Beginning the first week of construction, and as long as they're number 33, as long as the ground remains unstabilized, the applicant shall submit a weekly written report of the conservation, to the Conservation Commission from a registered professional engineer certifying that a careful site inspection conducted, basically it monitors compliance with the order. And the answer came back that, according to the owner, written reports were submitted.
And that would have been during construction of the project, so we were not able to find any written reports. Again, we interviewed the gentleman from Herb Chambers that were working with Mr. John Welch, who's a relatively new employee that took over for a predecessor that was responsible for some of these items. He's got a lot of files in his office. I went through some of them with him, and again, this is what we get back from Herb Chambers companies, that during construction, reports were prepared and submitted, but we don't have any evidence of them.
We don't have any in the file.
All right, that's kind of a problem with this. All right, so normally, we do two things in a situation like this, and we have had fines up as high as $15,000 in the past, quite a while ago, but not recently, when people have not submitted any inspection reports for a significant project. Do you think they're available?
All I can say is that we can go back and take a look again and see what we can find. I know, the only thing I know that we have in our possession is that 3-year contract that I mentioned that dates back to 2009. But I'd have to go back. At the time the project was approved, there was a different engineering company, Kelly Engineering Group, a company from the South Shore that helped secure the permitting from the engineering standpoint. And what I don't know if they were the ones that were conducting the regular inspections or not, but I can make some more phone calls for you and do my best to try to track that down.
Yeah,
John, if something like that was submitted, how long would your office normally keep them in your files?
Until
Still have them 10
the
years later?
certificate of compliance.
Okay, so for any open certificate of
Right.
compliance, okay.
I mean, I can check to see if we have electronic ones. There's certainly no paper ones. And I don't remember getting email inspection reports on that.
okay, so,
What we were able to report, Mr. Chair, is that, the limit of work was obvious. It's the property line that we share with the Mass DOT, and that limit of work was honored. And the as-built condition, appears to be in substantial conformance with the approved plan based on our as-built survey and our physical, walk of the site. That's what we can report.
well, the owner reports that written supports were submitted, so I guess you have to go back and ask them, whoever wrote that,
Okay.
find out,
The owner really know that?
I don't know.
Officially, it would be his
How
responsibility.
much is the bond on this?
They have a day-to-day construction.
The bond was $20,000. It was a paper bond that expired in 2016,
It expired.
after the project was completed, but yes.
We don't have to approve the certificate of compliance.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking of, sometimes in this situation, a forfeiture of part of the bond is submitted as a penalty. But we don't have that recourse here because the bond expired. Are we asking for a different type of bond so it doesn't expire now?
We're frequently asking for cash bonds now.
Cash is good
Well,
forever?
Check.
Check.
Right, we talked about that in our sort of work session that we had leading up to this meeting.
You can still issue, if there are none, you can still issue a fine.
I know we can, I know, but if we are holding the bond, it's
Yeah, it's easier.
a little easier. Okay,
So, I mean, there's the public hearing to open, so you don't have, you can defer decision on the certificate of compliance till the next meeting if.
yeah, and they may have some input on what was done, and, whatever contractor they hired may have arranged for it and just never submitted it.
So what I can tell you is that I know that I've heard names of we know who those contractors are. We have those names in the file. We could track people down and make some phone calls, and I'll do my best to see what we can find for you.
Right.
Additionally, this is over an acre, so it should have had a NIPD's construction permit, so, which also require inspection reports.
That's right. As you know, any disturbance more than an acre, it's, the rules keep changing a little bit. I think back at that time, it
So would they be
probably would've been at least
filed would those
once a
reports
week.
be filed at the state?
It's sort of self-reporting for the EPA permit. It's the responsibility of the operator to conduct weekly inspections and fill out your inspection forms or after a significant rainfall event.
What happens if you don't comply with that, the reporting on that?
So I guess it depends. It depends on the EPA and whether or not, there was a release of, what they're trying to protect, obviously, our waters of the U.S., just like you are. And the purpose of those, regulations and that NOI and the SWPPP process is to prevent sediment from migrating away from the site and into waters of the United States.
Those regulations haven't been changed yet, have they?
I was gonna say, they probably don't care anymore.
No, they're definitely still there.
Okay.
And we'll have one, obviously, for the next project that we're going to talk about.
Right. So what's the will of the commission? Should we postpone voting on this?
Yeah, I'd like to see what they can find.
Okay, so the declining to vote, please convey to your client that the non-availability of submitting any inspection reports, the commission finds that to be a serious issue.
It appears to be three different types of inspection reports. The EPA one, the one to us for during the project, and then the inspection reports of the O&M plant.
Right, the operating
So they're all-
inspection
there's
reports.
Three different types of reports.
Three
that we
different
don't see
types of
any records
reports, so we'll commit to speaking again on this. How's that?
That sounds fair.
All right. All right, so we'll take a pass on this, and we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Okay. Notice is hereby given that the Town of Burlington Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing. The purpose of the hearing is to take all information related to a notice of intent filed by Herb Chambers LLC for grading, parking lot construction, and other site improvements associated with the construction of a new automobile dealership at 64 Cambridge Street in Burlington. The proposed work would be within a 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The commission will review all information relative to the application and thereafter may issue an order of conditions. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Okay, good evening again.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Chris Sparagis, engineer from the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparagis, and we're here to present to the commission a notice of intent application for redevelopment of 64 Cambridge Street from the existing car storage facility and instead construct a new 24,500 square foot car dealership that will house the Porsche brand. The purpose of the project is to separate the Porsche brand from the existing Porsche Audi dealership that's currently located on 62 Cambridge Street. This gives you a pretty good idea of sort of an aerial overview of the two properties, 64, which is the subject of this notice of intent, and 62. So again, the proposal in the existing condition, Audi is on this side of the building, Porsche is on this side of the building, and there's a trend Porsche would like to it has a corporate change in their, in the way they look at their brand, and they want to separate from Audi to provide their customers with better service and that sort of thing. And so that's the reason for this construction activity on 64. I'll just zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to drop this down on the floor in a minute. But just if we back up a little bit, I'm sure you're all familiar with this, the location of the site here. North is this way on the plan. Here's Burlington Mall Road. Over to the west here is Cambridge Street, Route 3A. And this is the ramp that comes down from 128 at the Mall Road access here. 64 Cambridge Street is about 1.5 acres of land. And as you know, it contains quite a bit of impervious surface in the existing condition, mostly paved, if you will. And the reason why we're here in the discussion is because we do have some minor activity. I'll describe it in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland. There are a couple of wetland resource areas that we reflagged. They were the same ones that were identified on the previous filing for the car storage facility. To the north, on the other side of the ramp, is the primary BVW. And this is part of a larger system. This property, we happen to be sort of tucked away in the northwest corner of a Zone A to a public water supply that is in the town of Woburn. This wetland is, even though it's a wetland, we're very high in the watershed. Eventually, these waters flow through 64 and 62, and then along Cambridge Street, eventually flowing into, I sort of chased it down just to kind of give you folks an idea of where this goes. It eventually enters the Little Brook, and then to Cummings Brook, and then eventually into Woburn, into Horn Pond. So that's where, and that's about 2 miles away from us. The buffer zone from the bordering of vegetative wetland just comes on to the site into the parking lot area a little bit. And so our closest activity, as you'll see in a minute, is about 85 feet from that BVW. Across the street on Cambridge Street, there's also a small BVW located here, but its buffer zone doesn't come onto it just falls short of the property, so there's no activity within 100 feet of the wetland from across the street here. Generally, I guess we could, I'll just describe some of the basic elements of the project. And in terms of impervious surfaces, about 83% of the property is paved today. And what we're going to be doing as part of our proposal is taking up that paved surface and replacing it with another impervious surface, but it'll be roof area. It's going to be a reduction of about 11,400 square feet of pavement, so something to keep in mind as we're going through the plan. Overall, it is, I'm going to take that back, it's a 13,600 reduction in pavement, but overall we do have an increase in impervious surface of about 11,400 square feet. A lot more roof area than pavement. Even though this is being redeveloped, we're not asking for redevelopment credit. When I get into my discussion on the stormwater management standards, we're considering this new construction, full compliance with DEP stormwater management standards.
Where is most of that increase in impervious coming from? Is that from the gravel section being paved? Because otherwise
Yes.
it's all just roof and pavement.
That's right. We were
Okay.
conservative in those representations. Just to give you an idea, I did break that out as well. That gravel area, for example, is just over 8,000 square feet, so it's just about a 3,200 square foot increase in hardscape, but we included that gravel area as impervious because if you recall in the previous plan, it had a building on it, back at that time.
Okay. Oh, there's another curb cut and stuff, which is additional impervious. Okay, I'm beginning to see where it comes from now.
That's
Thank you.
right. So you may recall that in the existing condition, and prior to the car storage facility, this had another commercial/industrial use. There were 2 curb cuts that came out onto Cambridge Street, 2 curb cuts, and they made us close both of them because this parking lot, if you will, was going to work in concert, and it does with the dealership today. At the time, the owner reserved the right to come back to the town and reopen a curb cut in the future if that property was sort of going to be a standalone property. And so here we are today, and our proposal is to reopen this curb cut onto Cambridge Street at this location. In terms of general flow, we have two-way traffic around the entire building, and you can see how the parking is laid out on the project. This building, in addition to having a large floor area for customers, and there's also a lower level garage space for inventory vehicles. So there's space for 85 inventory vehicles in a lower level. I'll go into a little bit about where the groundwater is in relationship to those floors and what have you in just a minute. So for the remainder of my presentation, we're going to be referring to the topographic plan and our utility plan that has most of the drainage information. This is our topographic plan of the property. And just to give you an idea, in the existing condition, you saw it for yourselves out there yesterday, the site has a slope to it. So we're up along the property line that we share with 62, we're up around elevation 195. And as we slope towards east, we have a drop from about 195 to as low as 190 on the low end of the site. So it's about a 5-foot difference. And the way we're going to be changing that is that we're going to take this sloped area and we need to level it out a little bit to support the building so that all of the doors around the building, people will be able to come out and they'll be at the same elevation. And so the floor of the proposed building is now going to be 195. So we're going to be filling 4 to 5 feet down in this corner here and less everywhere else. But we're going to be filling it in. And because of that, the existing retaining wall that exists on the downhill side of the project needs to be raised. And because it's only, and you can see it'll be raised about 4 or 5 feet or so. And because of that, it's going to have to be reconstructed. And so there are segmental blocks. We'll be able to redesign a new block wall system and utilize those existing blocks and raise it 4 to 5 feet. The grading program will also require us to extend the wall just a little bit out in that area there. So as we're looking at the plan, you can see that we've identified the BVW. And then you can see the 100-foot buffer zone. The activity that falls within 100 feet includes obviously the reconstructed wall, and it's going to be reconstructed in the same exact location, so we're not moving it any closer than it exists today. And then the reconstruction of the parking lot and one of our catch basins falls within that zone, if you will. So that's the activity within the buffer zone. In terms of utilities, I'll just explain that we have the luxury of having water and sewer sort of come on the site already, and so we don't have to go out. Our information tells us we don't have to go back out onto Cambridge Street, and so on our utility plan, we'll be bringing water and sewer to the building from the existing services that already exist on the property. But we are going to be, we do have to redesign the drainage system, and because it's relatively new, we decided after talking with our client and putting our heads together in the office that in this case it makes sense to see if we can reuse the Caltech chambers, the Caltech 330 HD chambers that are under the parking lot, and the CDS, the contact devices, which provide some additional stormwater treatment. And so as I go through the proposed stormwater management design, we're going to reuse those Caltech 330s and just we need to increase them in size to support our proposal, but that something a little bit different. We don't normally do that or have the luxury of doing that. We talked a little bit about it with staff, about making sure that they're inspected by a professional engineer. We've already been in touch with the folks at Caltech and the folks that make the proprietary device. And so it really depends on how careful the site work contractor is as these are unearthed and excavated. But before they're put back in use, they'll be inspected by a professional engineer to make sure that they're intact, if you will. So our grading plan is very simple because the building takes up most of the site at 195, and then we slope gently away in all directions. And I'll just go right over to our utility plan to go into more detail on our stormwater management system and how we comply with the stormwater management standards.
Could you perhaps go through the routing of generally stormwater on the pavement and stormwater off the building?
Absolutely. So obviously, what we do with any project, we first take a look at the soils maps and see what they tell us about the hydrologic soil groups. In this case, we also had the luxury of the work that was previously done back in 14. So we know that the soils maps were not very helpful because it describes the soil as urban land. And so we went out with Christine Mathis back at the end of August, and we dug a series of deep test holes to characterize the texture of the soil and make sure that we were well above estimated seasonal high groundwater. One of our approved soil evaluators was on site with Christine at the time. And we also had the luxury of a nice geotechnical report for this very large building. And a series of borings were conducted, and groundwater was estimated at approximately elevation 179 to 180. And if I could just show you a little.
That's seasonally high groundwater?
That was that's in the geotechnical report, that they observed physical water anywhere from 179 to 180. In our deep holes, we excavated 5 deep test holes, and there was no observation of groundwater at any of the holes. Down to test holes varied, if you will, a little bit. We excavated holes anywhere from elevation 180, and then we hit refusal in a couple of them at a shallow depth of about elevation 192 in a couple of spots. One of our test holes, our test hole number 2, we did see some evidence of modeling up around elevation 186, up around elevation 183. It was very close to the existing infiltration galleries, and so it could have been a result of models from that system. So because we did observe modeling at elevation 183, we decided to hold that elevation as the estimated seasonal high groundwater table as we set the elevations for the subsurface structures on this side of the building, if you will. Even though it looks like, and I'll use a different color to show you where the existing stormwater area is today. So that pink square is where the existing Caltech chambers are, and we dug that test hole on this end of the system. We dug down to elevation 180, no evidence of water, but up around where we hit the filter fabric that was associated with that system, and right around that elevation, there was some evidence of modeling on that side of the hole. Probably not estimated seasonal high groundwater, but we kept this system up higher, even higher than the previous design. So relative elevations, the basement level is down at elevation 193. The geotechnical report tells us that the groundwater surface is down around 180. And then the first floor level of the building is up around elevation 195. And then our infiltration systems are sort of on either side of the building. And they're both set at least 2 feet higher than the estimated seasonal high groundwater that we established in the test holes that we excavated. So the way the stormwater system works It's not quite split in half, but let me just use two different colors to show you that for our infiltration area number 2 here, we have deep sunk catch basins that collect surface water runoff from this portion of the site, heading back in this direction. And they connect to a drain manhole and then to our sediment separation device, which we're going to be reusing, and then to another discharge manhole before entering the subsurface chambers. What I didn't tell the Concom is that we just had our hearing number 3 with the planning board on this project last week, and leading up to that meeting, after we had already filed with the Conservation Commission, there were some minor revisions to our landscaping primarily. After we had met with John and Eileen, John had made a recommendation to us regarding how we're connecting our roof runoff to the infiltration system. We had designed the system, and we go back, we work in a lot of different towns, and there are some towns and some reviewing engineers that like us to run our roof runoff through the sediment separation device, and some folks that just say just run it directly to the infiltration device because it's considered clean.
Correct.
So we had run it through the device, and John said, geez, why are you doing that? Why do you have to sort of treat water that's already clean? And so we've sort of reoriented the drain manholes to bypass that separator device.
So
with our roof
those
runoff.
devices work on a bypass concept when it gets too high.
Anyway, but-
So it means more of the stuff's going to be bypassed if you do it, so.
Right.
Probably
So
good.
we separated it, and a portion of the roof, if you will, comes out here and enters that final manhole after the separation device now. You haven't seen that small change yet, but we'll be sure to submit the revised plans. On the other side of the site, we have our infiltration area number 1. Again, we have a series of deep sunk catch basins that run to a series of manholes. There's a small trench drain here to make sure that we're capturing the water that's coming off in this direction. And it's a very similar setup, a series of drain manholes that leads to the separation device, and then to the final manhole, and then the rest of the roof, if you will, discharging to the manhole and then to the infiltration device. Now, going through the 10 standards, before I go into that, just to refresh your memory, the existing stormwater system had overflow devices that came out through the retaining wall. And so in those higher storm events, the overflows came out through the retaining wall and into a small depressed area. That's the stormwater management area for the highway, if you will. We kept a very similar approach. So we have an overflow structure that comes out of this infiltration area, number 1, through the retaining wall. And then for the other one across the street, we are proposing a level spreader in the back here to control any water that were to come out of that device. I'll go into how we were able to mitigate both volume and peak flow in a minute, but going through the standards, we have no new outfalls without control. That one is a new outfall, but we're controlling it with a level spreader, and we've designed the size of the riprap based on the velocity of the water coming out in the design storms that are appropriate for sizing that riprap. In terms of peak runoff, if you look at our summary tables in the beginning of our stormwater report, we have slight reductions. We try to get it as close to net change 0 as we can for each of the design storms. And we were also able to mitigate the volume as well through the use of our 2 infiltration chambers. And that's all the way through the 100-year storm event. For groundwater recharge, our test hole program determined that we have sandy loams, which is hydrologic soil group of B, which is...
Excuse me, did you just say you're mitigating volume in addition to peak?
I beg your pardon?
You're mitigating the volume in addition to the peak flow?
That's correct. With the sandy loam, that we, our approved soil evaluator determined a hydrologic soil group B for the sandy loam that was observed, which is consistent with the previous engineering drainage design. Because we're within a critical area, that being a zone 2 to the public water supply, the recharge volume was increased to 1 inch of runoff instead of a ½ an inch. And so that's how we were able to meet the groundwater recharge requirement. For treatment, with the use of the catch base, the deep sump catch basins and the sediment trap removal device, we're able to achieve close to 88% removal even before we get to the infiltration basins, which is a little bit more than what we would normally do, and we decided to reuse those devices since they're on site. And so we have a little bit of additional runoff there, additional treatment there. Standard number 5 is the land use with higher pollution, pollutant load, which is, we use the acronym LUPL. This is not a LUPL. Standard number 6, critical areas. We do have a critical area in this case with the zone 2, which requires additional infiltration volume. Standard number 7 was the redevelopment standard, but we're not asking for any credit as a redevelopment project. Number 8, it has to do with operation and maintenance and actually construction period pollution prevention. And because we're going to be disturbing more than an acre, what we'd like to do in our stormwater reports is actually prepare the stormwater pollution prevention plan that will be pulled out and attached to the EPA notice of intent later, so that it's all prepared at the time we do our stormwater report. Standard number 9, long-term O&M. We have a detailed operation and maintenance plan for the project, and hopefully it'll be adhered to going forward. And then finally, as with any project, we have to make a statement that we promise not to have any illicit discharges into the stormwater treatment system. So we do that in our stormwater report as well. That covers the 10 standards. One of the other things that we've been doing more and more with communities that have MS4 permit issues, some of our sites, we're able to help towns gain credit for things like phosphorus removal if they happen to be in a part of town where they have a TMDL that requires them to report findings to the state every year. And so in our stormwater report, there's a section that describes how much phosphorus we're able to remove through the use of the infiltration devices. So that information is in our stormwater report as well. So that's the end of my formal presentation, Mr. Chairman, but we've been at this with the planning board for 3 meetings. I can talk about a little bit about landscaping and how we were going to be losing a lot of trees out front, 15 of them altogether, but we've worked really hard with staff and have come up with a way to relocate all of them. So we're not losing any trees, and we're not losing any trees or shrubs. And some of them are very large. Some of the trees are 10 to 14 feet high. Some of them are conifers, some deciduous. There's about 38 hollies out in front that are 3.5, 4 feet high now, and they're all going to be transplanted into another portion of the site. So I thought that was worth mentioning. Thank you.
Okay, so rather than have you said you could do what?
I could go into the landscaping plan if you wanted to find out.
I would suggest we hold off on that.
Right.
Only because I'd like to give the commission an opportunity to ask questions and hear any comments, preliminary comments that we have from staff at this point. So, John, any reaction to what you've heard so far, or review?
So this is essentially an erosion and sedimentation control hearing. I mean, it's a notice of intent, but the buffer zone barely intrudes on the property, so you're really reviewing this as almost as if it's not a wetland filing, it's an erosion and sedimentation control filing. Stormwater is the primary concern. And it's a really fairly straightforward site. There's a collection system into proprietary structures, the contacts into the infiltration structures. So it's pretty straightforward. They're proposing to, certainly there are their pre-treatment far exceeds the requirement. In a zone 2, in a critical area, you have to remove 44% of the TSS prior to infiltration. And they're, although their numbers are probably higher than they are probably exaggerated, but they're saying 80%, which is far, far more than they would need to remove. The peak rates are essentially unchanged from existing conditions. I mean, they're very slightly reduced, but overall, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward project.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any concerns at this point, or issues that they need to respond to at this point?
No.
There may be.
Right.
Right. All right. Carrie, any questions?
Nope.
You're okay for now?
Overwhelming.
What's that?
Overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
I mean, we know the site, so.
Yes. Well, that's what happens when you have someone giving a thorough presentation.
I'm sorry, it's the first time, I haven't appeared before you before. I've been at this for 25 years, so we're
No,
really
that was
proud of
a,
what we do, so.
actually, it was a very well-organized presentation, and you made it easy to understand, so that actually didn't sound that way. It was meant to be a compliment.
Okay, thanks.
Bill?
I reiterate that compliment, a very good presentation. I think it looks like a good plan, and I'm happy to see how much you're able to recycle materials. I think that's a positive approach, so I like that.
No, is it? Ditto.
Okay, I have just a couple of comments. With the sumps, you're taking 25% removal, and the sediment traps, you're taking so much. Is it 88% because of those two things, or you're taking credit for sweeping as well?
No credit for sweeping, so 25%, if you look at the, in the back of our stormwater report, it sort of breaks it down.
Yeah.
So we're at 88% before we go into the, to the chambers, but then we also show you how, you know, with the deep sump catch basins and the, just the chambers themselves, we're at 80% just with those two, which is what we would normally do. We wouldn't need a
Well, let me
treatment device.
explain. I don't know if you're answering the question the way I meant it. Going into the rechargers, does there need to be an isolator row? I mean, there's enough solids going in that you need, that's what I'm trying to ask. Do you need an isolator row, or is it so high performance that going in completely in parallel is fine? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, yes, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so in this case where we have these hefty contact devices, an isolator row would not be necessary in this case.
All right, and you're already getting high performance going in for the removal?
That's correct.
So the Contec it's essentially like a storm scepter. It's another brand.
Right.
Similar to storm scepter. So it's catch basin, storm scepter type device than the infiltrator.
Okay, that answers that. And were you going to, before the next meeting, talk to your client about what can be done along that whole edge with the rusted fence in some parts and leaning over fence and litter and all that stuff? Would you talk to your client about that?
Absolutely. So I can promise you that any windblown litter, we're happy to walk over there, even if it's not our property. The fence is another story. We'll have to kind of make a couple of phone calls, I think, and find out.
Whose fence it is?
Right. I'm guessing it's Mass DOT. Obviously, we have contacts at Mass DOT. We can reach out to them and find out.
Maybe you can come to an arrangement where, while the machine is there, you could pull out the fence part that is down. I'm not sure it's doing much at this point, and dispose of it. I don't know if your client would agree to do that, if it's not theirs, but.
Right, we can, I would say that if they gave us permission and it was a sort of a safety issue or that it was in disrepair, not doing anything, I'm sure that they would be happy to do it if they had permission from Mass DOT.
And, okay, let's see what the answer comes back before we go any further on that, but I would see that as a credit to Mr. Chambers' account, so to speak.
Understood.
Not enough to.
What?
Not enough to absolve from not submitting inspection inspection.
Not enough,
Right.
not enough to totally absolve, but there may be some credit accrued, who knows? We'll see what the other commissioners say about that. Oh, and the other comment, this is just a comment, dissociating the rooftop runoff from the sediment traps, you call them, is there a name to them?
The brand is Contec.
From the context, if you will. Therefore, you'll be having mostly dirty water going in there, and the maintenance plan to check for the depth of sediment in those contacts would be even more important. In other words, it's not gonna flush through because you're not gonna have clean water at higher volume bypassing with it.
So the way these devices are, most of them are very similar. There's a similar device over on 62. There's sort of a rotation that happens inside the structure, and the sediment is sort of, usually with a vortex-type movement of...
But it traps mostly in low flow, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Most of, 95% of our storms are, two-year storm or less.
So without the higher volume of the roof, is what I'm trying to say, you're likely to keep the stuff in there without any bypass happening.
Yeah, and I think that's where John was going with his comment as well.
Okay, all right, just a comment anyway. All right, I don't have anything further, so, I'm sure the office you can be in touch with the office to see if there's anything ahead of time, but I guess we'll continue the review. Other than what we talked about, is there anything else that, John, that this individual would need to bring back to us for the next meeting?
I don't think so. You're not in the DEP database as of yesterday, so.
I checked before I came. We're waiting to clear. So I'll reach out to Jim Freely and see if I can make that happen.
Do you anticipate that we might close at the next meeting?
Yes.
Will that jive with the planning board?
Yeah, the planning board was anxious to hear back from the Conservation Commission on the project. They want to make sure that you're happy with the project and
Right.
from a stormwater management standpoint.
Right.
There have been no changes to the plans. All of our focus has been on the landscaping out front.
All right.
So closing it the next time, the Mullins rule will come into effect because there's only 3 people here who will be able to vote on it. And if you're all here at the next meeting on January 10th, we would need to get at least one of the members who's absent to make sure they watch the tape. I
Right.
don't know if all 3 of you are planning on being here. If not, then we...
I was planning to be here. How about you?
January 10th?
Yeah, okay,
Okay. All right, so
because Kerry won't be.
we know. Okay, so the record should note there was no one in the audience for this one.
So there will be a revised plan set that you haven't seen yet, showing the change to the configuration of the roof coming in, so I'll make sure to get those over to staff.
All right, we don't need probably don't need the existing site plans again, and some of the detailed plans, probably just the grading and drainage if that's changed and stuff, at least for the commissioners, I would think. All right, anything else from the commission? No. All right, so we'll see you, the next meeting is January 10th, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much for your time. Okay. Do you have 22 Town Line Road? Yeah, signed over there. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, just want to have this. It's all signed, okay. All right. So let's finish up first before we get to that. Planning board comments. John, could we write a note to the planning board about how this went?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Subcommittee and staff reports, is there anything?
No.
The open space and recreation plan was sent out for comments.
The action,
Action plan.
sorry,
Yep,
The action plan.
yep.
yeah.
Could we hold comments open just a little bit after the first of the year? Is that possible? Or there's a reason?
Well, we're kind of just following the lead of our consultant on this with the dates. Did she have a reason for closing them before?
Just the people are so busy now, and, it's closing it right before the holidays.
Yeah,
Could that,
yeah, we'll see. I'll talk to
could
her.
you ask?
Yeah. Well, we're trying to wrap up this process, I mean, but,
Well, I know, but I just thought closing it right before the holidays, everyone's totally
Okay.
occupied with the various holidays they celebrate. Okay, and next is upcoming meetings, January 10th and January 24th. Anybody out 24th? No, okay. Other business? Nope, I have one other business. Two other businesses. One is in back of H-Mart. There's a whole bunch of trash in back there, and seems to be an abandoned car right next to the wetlands, right in back of their building. It has no license plate, so I'm calling it abandoned.
A lot of trucks come in and out of there
So
all the time.
would you let me know what the reaction is to it? It'd be very helpful. Anything else? Oh, yeah, and the last item is, this is the Town Line Road one that we signed. This has special significance. This is the last order of conditions that Kerry Mellinson will ever sign for the Conservation Commission. So I wanted to point that out to the,
And historical document.
it's an historical document. I wanted to point it out and we could always arrange for you to get a copy if it means something.
And framed and presented, yeah.
Here's the last thing with the signature.
You get a copy
Anyways,
of the first one, it would be a nice batch pair,
there we go.
25 years ago.
All right, so again, Kerry, thank you very much for all the devotion and time you spent. I know the commission appreciates it, and I suspect a lot of our residents and even the business community, they did appreciate it as well. Okay, thank you very much. Best of luck. All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Would you like to second, Kerry?
Second.
Second, all in favor? 400. Very good. Good evening, have good holidays.
Carrie, I'll see you in the neighborhood, I assume. Yeah, okay.
If I don't go away,
You don't what?
supposed to go away.
No, but you're not moving